Imagine a powerful CEO pointing at a single dad. Search his bag. The room freezes. A little girl watches from the gate, clutching her bear. What happens next will shock you. Vivian did not believe in innocence. When the money disappeared from her office, it took her only seconds to give the order. Check his bag. Him, Ethan, the man who had cared for her mother for 2 years, lowered his head and opened his bag without a word. Everyone fell silent. Only a child stood outside the iron gate, clutching a stuffed bear, watching her father as if the world had just collapsed. From that moment on, Vivian would realize some things lost cost more than money. But wait, was Ethan really the thief, or was someone else hiding in plain sight? The Layton estate sat behind tall hedges and iron gates. The kind of place where silence was expensive and privacy cost even more. Inside, the air smelled like imported lilies and furniture polished. Vivian Layton ran a tech empire from the second floor, where her office overlooked a garden she never walked through. Her schedule was measured in 15-minute blocks. Her assistant knew better than to let anything run over. Her mother lived on the first floor in a suite with pale yellow curtains and too many pillows. Eleanor Layton had been a pianist once before her hands started shaking and her memory began slipping through the cracks. Now she spent her days in a wheelchair by the window, humming songs she could no longer name. Ethan had worked in hospitals for years before this. He knew how to lift without hurting, how to speak without startling, how to be present without being seen. When Vivian hired him 2 years ago, she made it clear what she expected. Her mother needed care, not conversation. Ethan nodded and kept his questions to himself. He arrived every morning at 8 and left at 6 o'clock. He helped Eleanor with her meals, her medicine, her bath. He read to her when she asked and sat quietly when she did not. She liked him because he did not treat her like she was broken. He liked her because she still laughed at small things like birds landing on the window sill or the smell of rain. Lily came with him sometimes. She was 7, with wild curls and a backpack full of crayons. Ethan did not have anyone else to watch her, and Eleanor did not mind. In fact, she lit up whenever the girl appeared. Lily would sit on the floor and draw, or play simple melodies on the old piano in the corner. Eleanor would close her eyes and smile, her fingers twitching as if she were playing along. Vivian hated it. She hated the sound of a child's laughter drifting up through the vents while she was on a call. She hated the sticky fingerprints on the banister and the toys left behind in the hallway. One afternoon, she came downstairs and found Lily spinning in circles in the foyer, arms stretched wide, singing something tuneless and bright. Vivian stopped in the doorway. Her voice was flat and cold. "Why is there a child in my house?" Ethan appeared from the other room, wiping his hands on a towel. He saw Vivian's face and moved quickly, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Miss Layton. It won't happen again." Vivian's eyes stayed on the girl who had gone very still. "It better not." After that, Lily waited outside. Ethan would park near the gate, and she would sit in the car with her books and her stuffed bear, watching the house through the iron bars. Sometimes Eleanor would ask where the little girl was. Ethan would smile and say she was busy at school. Eleanor did not believe him, but she did not push. Then came the day everything broke. It started with a missing envelope. Vivian kept it in the top drawer of her desk. A plain white sleeve containing cash and a signed contract she needed for a meeting that afternoon. When she opened the drawer, it was gone. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space. Then she walked to the hallway and called for the housekeeper. The woman came quickly, her face pale. "Did you touch anything in my office?" The housekeeper shook her head. "No, ma'am. I cleaned yesterday morning, but I didn't open any drawers." Vivian turned and went back inside. She pulled up the security feed on her computer, but the camera that covered her office door had malfunctioned. The timestamp showed a blank screen for nearly 2 hours that morning. She leaned back in her chair, jaw tight. Only a few people had access to the second floor: the housekeeper, the gardener, who never came inside, and Ethan. Vivian walked downstairs. Eleanor was in her chair by the window, eyes half closed. Ethan was folding a blanket nearby. He looked up when Vivian entered, and his expression shifted slightly. He could tell something was wrong. "I need to speak with you," Vivian said. Ethan set the blanket down and followed her into the hallway. Vivian did not waste time. "Something is missing from my office, an envelope with money and a contract." Ethan blinked. "I haven't been upstairs today." Vivian's eyes stayed on his face. "You're the only one who goes up there besides the housekeeper, and she was off-site this morning." Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. "I didn't take anything." Vivian did not answer. She turned and called for the head of her security team, a man named Garrett, who wore a suit that did not quite fit. He arrived within minutes, his expression neutral but watchful. "Check his bag," Vivian said. Ethan stared at her. "You can't be serious." Vivian's voice did not change. "If you have nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem." Garrett stepped forward. Ethan looked between them, his hands tightening at his sides. He thought about walking out. He thought about refusing. But then he thought about Lily waiting outside, in the car, and how much harder it would be to find another job if he made this worse. So he opened his bag. Garrett went through it carefully. A water bottle, a phone charger, a worn paperback, a picture Lily had drawn that morning. Nothing else. Vivian watched without speaking. When Garrett stepped back and shook his head, she crossed her arms. Empty your pockets. Ethan did. Keys, wallet, receipts, loose change. Still nothing. Eleanor's voice came from the next room, thin and confused. What's happening? No one answered her. Vivian looked at Ethan for a long time, her face unreadable. Then she spoke, her tone clipped and final. You're suspended until further notice. Do not come back until I say otherwise. Ethan felt the words hit him like a fist. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Garrett was already holding the door open. Ethan walked outside. The air was cool and sharp. Lily was sitting on the curb near the gate, her bear tucked under one arm. When she saw him, she jumped up and ran over. Can we go see Miss Eleanor now? Ethan knelt down in front of her. He forced his voice to stay steady. Not today, sweetheart. Lily's face fell. Why not? Ethan did not know how to explain it. He did not know how to tell her that people could stop trusting you in seconds. That you could do everything right and still be wrong in someone else's eyes. She's resting, he said quietly. Lily looked past him, toward the house. Then she looked back at her father. Are you sad? Ethan tried to smile. It did not reach his eyes. I'm okay. They walked to the car together. Ethan buckled her in and sat behind the wheel, but he did not start the engine. He just stared at the gate, at the house beyond it, at the life he had just lost without warning. Inside, Eleanor was crying. She did not understand why Ethan had left without saying goodbye. Vivian stood in the doorway, watching her mother with something that might have been guilt or might have been nothing at all. He'll be back if he's innocent, Vivian said. Eleanor turned her head slowly. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. And if he is innocent, what will you do then? Vivian did not answer. She left the room and went back upstairs. The envelope was still missing. The camera was still broken. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that she might have just made a terrible mistake. But Vivian Layton did not listen to small voices. She listened to facts. And the fact said someone had taken something from her. And Ethan was the only one who could have done it. Hold on. What if the real thief was closer than anyone thought? That night, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with a stack of bills in front of him. Lily was asleep in the next room. He did not turn on the lights. He just sat there in the dark, trying to figure out how he was going to prove something he should never have had to prove in the first place. He thought about Eleanor. He thought about the way she smiled when Lily played the piano. He thought about the trust she had given him, and the trust her daughter had just taken away. And he made a decision. If Vivian wanted proof, he would find it himself. Not because he owed her anything, but because his daughter deserved a father who fought back when the world tried to break him. Ethan pulled out his phone and started making notes. He did not know where to start. He did not know if he would find anything. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let this end with him walking away in silence. Ethan started asking questions the next morning. He called the housekeeper first, a woman named Ruth, who had worked for the Laytons for nearly a decade. She answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. I can't talk about this, Ruth said before Ethan could finish his sentence. I'm not asking you to get involved. I just need to know who else had access to the second floor that day. Ruth went quiet for a moment. Ethan heard a door close on her end. Miss Layton's assistant was there. Marcus, he's the only other person with a keycard for the security system. Ethan wrote the name down. Does he go up there often? Every day. He handles her schedule, her files, everything. Look, Ethan, I have to go. The line went dead before he could say anything else. Marcus. Ethan had seen him before. A man in his early 30s with slicked hair and a voice that never rose above polite. He moved through the house like he owned it. Always a step behind Vivian, always carrying something important. Ethan had never spoken to him directly. Marcus barely acknowledged the staff. Ethan drove to a coffee shop near the estate and sat in the parking lot watching cars come and go. He needed to think. If Marcus had access to the security system, he could have turned off the camera. But why would he? And why would he take an envelope from Vivian's desk when he already had access to everything she owned? The answer felt obvious. Because he needed something she did not know he was taking. Ethan opened his laptop and started searching. Marcus's full name was Marcus Trent. His social media was minimal. Just a clean, professional profile with a photo that looked like it had been taken by a corporate photographer. No personal posts, no friends tagged, nothing that gave anything away. Ethan leaned back and rubbed his eyes. He was reaching. He had no proof, just a name and a suspicion that might mean nothing. Lily tugged on his sleeve from the passenger seat. Can we go see Miss Eleanor today? Ethan looked at her at the hope still bright in her face and felt something crack inside him. Not yet, sweetheart. She's still resting. Lily frowned and turned back to her coloring book. Ethan watched her for a moment, then closed the laptop. He needed to find another way in. That night, he took a job washing dishes at a diner across town. The pay was terrible, but it was something. He worked the late shift so Lily could stay with a neighbor, an older woman who did not ask questions. When he got home after midnight, he collapsed into bed without bothering to change his clothes. The days blurred together. Ethan worked. He slept a few hours. He asked quiet questions to people who did not want to answer. And slowly, the story started to take shape. Marcus had worked for Vivian for 3 years. Before that, he had been let go from 2 other companies for reasons no one would explain. Ethan found a former coworker who was willing to talk over the phone. A man who sounded tired and bitter. Marcus was good at his job, the man said, but he was better at covering his tracks. We couldn't prove anything, but things went missing. Data files. Small stuff at first, then bigger. Ethan tightened his grip on the phone. Did anyone report it? We tried. He had an alibi for everything, and he was careful. By the time we figured it out, he was already gone. Ethan thanked him and hung up. It was not enough. It was barely anything, but it was more than he had before. Then Eleanor called him. Ethan was working the dinner shift when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He wiped his hands and stepped into the alley behind the diner. The number was unknown, but he answered anyway. Ethan. It was Eleanor's voice, soft and shaken. Miss Eleanor, how did you get this number? I found it in Vivian's office. She wrote it down when she hired you. Listen to me. Something happened. Ethan pressed the phone closer to his ear. What do you mean? Eleanor's breathing was uneven, like she was struggling to get the words out. Someone came into my room a few days ago. I didn't say anything because I thought I imagined it, but I didn't. He took something from under my pillow, a small drive. I kept it there because I didn't know where else to hide it. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. What was on it? I don't know. Vivian gave it to me months ago. She said it was a backup of something important and she didn't trust anyone else to keep it. She said if anything happened, I should give it to the police. Ethan's mind raced. Did you see who took it? Eleanor's voice dropped to a whisper. I saw his face. It was the man who works for Vivian, the one with the dark hair. Marcus. Ethan closed his eyes and leaned against the brick wall. It made sense now. The envelope was never about money. It was about the drive. Marcus needed access to Eleanor's room, but he could not risk being seen. So, he staged the theft upstairs, framed Ethan, and used the chaos to slip in and take what he really wanted. Miss Eleanor, you need to tell Vivian. Eleanor let out a weak laugh. She won't believe me. She thinks I'm confused. She thinks I see things that aren't there. Ethan clenched his jaw. Then I'll tell her. She won't believe you either. You know she won't. Ethan did not argue. Eleanor was right. Vivian had already made up her mind. He was the thief. Marcus was untouchable. I have to go, Eleanor said, her voice fading. Someone's coming. The line went dead. Ethan stood there in the alley, staring at the phone in his hand. He had what he needed now. He knew who took the drive. He knew why. But knowing and proving were 2 different things. He spent the next 3 days trying to find a way to get evidence. He parked outside the estate and watched the gates. He followed Marcus to a coffee shop, to a dry cleaner, to his apartment building, but Marcus never did anything suspicious. He never looked over his shoulder. He moved through the world like a man who had already won. Ethan was running out of time and money. The bills were piling up. Lily asked him twice why they were eating cereal for dinner. He told her they were trying something new. Then the rumor started. It began with a phone call from a nurse Ethan used to work with. She sounded uncomfortable, like she did not want to make the call, but felt she had to. Ethan, people are talking. Someone's saying you stole from the Laytons, that you were taking advantage of the old woman. Ethan sat down slowly. Who's saying that? I don't know. It's just going around. I wanted you to hear it from me. She hung up before he could respond. The next day, he got a call from another agency he had applied to. They said they were no longer considering him for the position. They did not give a reason. They did not have to. Ethan tried 2 more places. Both turned him down within hours. By the end of the week, he had no work and no prospects. He sold his car to pay rent. He started walking Lily to school because he could not afford gas. She asked him why they were walking now, and he told her it was good exercise. She looked up at him with those wide, trusting eyes and smiled. Okay, Daddy. Ethan felt like he was drowning. One afternoon, Lily came home from school crying. Her backpack was torn and there was a scrape on her knee. Ethan knelt down and pulled her close. What happened? Lily sobbed into his shoulder. Some kids said, you're a bad person. They said you steal things. I told them it's not true, but they pushed me. Ethan held her tighter. He felt rage and helplessness twist together in his chest. He did not know how to fix this. He did not know how to protect her from something he could not even see. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan sat on the floor of their apartment and stared at the wall. He thought about giving up. He thought about taking Lily and moving to another city, starting over somewhere no one knew his name. But then he thought about Eleanor, about the way she had trusted him, about the way she had called him. Even though it put her at risk, he could not walk away. Not yet. The next morning, Ethan got a call from a number he did not recognize. He answered, expecting another rejection. Instead, he heard Ruth's voice. Ethan, it's me. Don't say anything. Just listen. Miss Eleanor had a stroke. She's in the hospital. Vivian doesn't know I'm calling you. Ethan's blood went cold. Is she okay? She's stable, but but she can't talk. The doctors say it might be temporary, but they don't know. Ethan closed his eyes. Thank you for telling me. Ruth hesitated. There's something else. Marcus has been deleting files from the security system. I saw him in the server room last night. I don't know what he's looking for, but he's scared. Ethan felt something shift inside him. Thank you, Ruth. He hung up and stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then he grabbed his jacket and walked out the door. He took a bus to the hospital and went straight to the front desk. They would not let him see Eleanor. Vivian had left strict instructions. Only family. Ethan stood in the hallway for a long time, trying to decide what to do next. Then he saw Vivian step out of the elevator. She was on her phone, her voice sharp and clipped. She did not see him. Ethan started to walk toward her, but a security guard stepped in front of him. Sir, you need to leave. Vivian looked up. Her eyes locked on Ethan, and her expression hardened. What are you doing here? Ethan did not back down. I need to talk to you. Vivian ended her call and walked closer. Her voice was ice. You're not allowed near my mother. If you don't leave, I'll have you arrested. Ethan clenched his fists at his sides. She called me. She told me someone took something from her room. It wasn't me. It was Marcus. Vivian's face did not change. You're delusional. Check the footage. Check the logs. He's been erasing files. Vivian stepped even closer. Her voice, low and dangerous. You lost your job because you're a thief, and now you're trying to ruin someone else's life to save your own. Stay away from my family, or I will make sure you regret it. She turned and walked back toward the elevator. The security guard gestured for Ethan to leave. He did not move. Then he felt a small hand slip into his. Lily was standing beside him, her bear tucked under one arm. She must have followed him from the bus stop. She looked up at him, her face serious and sad. Let's go home, Daddy. Ethan looked down at her. Then he looked back at Vivian, who was already disappearing behind the elevator doors. He had lost. He had tried everything, and it was not enough. They walked outside into the rain. Lily held his hand the whole way. When they got to the bus stop, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I made this for Miss Eleanor, but I guess she can't see it now. Ethan took the paper and unfolded it. It was a crayon drawing. A stick figure of Eleanor in her wheelchair. A stick figure of Lily playing the piano. And in the corner, another figure, a man holding something small and square. Ethan stared at the drawing. His heart started to pound. Lily, who's this? Lily looked at the picture. That's the man who came into Miss Eleanor's room. I saw him when I was waiting outside one day. He was holding something shiny. Ethan crouched down in front of her, rain soaking through his jacket. When did you draw this? A long time ago. I was going to give it to Miss Eleanor, but I forgot. Ethan looked at the picture again. The man in the corner had dark hair. He was holding a small rectangle, a USB drive. It was not proof. Not the kind that would hold up in court, but it was something. It was a thread, and Ethan was going to pull it until the whole thing unraveled. He folded the picture carefully and put it in his pocket. Then he stood up and took Lily's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We have one more place to go. Ethan took Lily back to the neighbor's apartment and asked if she could stay a little longer. The woman nodded without asking questions. Lily hugged her father before he left, her small arms tight around his waist. Are you going to fix everything? She asked. Ethan knelt down and looked her in the eyes. I'm going to try. He kissed her forehead and left before she could see the doubt in his face. The Layton building was downtown, a steel and glass tower that reflected the gray sky. Ethan had never been inside. He stood across the street for a few minutes, rain dripping from his hair, the drawing folded in his jacket pocket. Then he crossed the street and walked through the front doors. The lobby was cold and polished. A security desk sat in the center, and a woman in a dark uniform looked up as he approached. Can I help you? Ethan's clothes were soaked. He looked like someone who did not belong there. I need to see Vivian Layton. The woman's expression did not change. Do you have an appointment? No, but she wants to see me. The woman picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. Then she looked back at Ethan. Miss Layton is in a meeting. You'll have to come back another time. Ethan did not move. Tell her, Ethan Reed is here. Tell her it's about her mother. The woman hesitated, then made another call. This time her voice was quieter. She listened for a moment, then hung up. Someone will be down to escort you out. Ethan turned away from the desk and walked toward the elevators. The woman called after him, but he did not stop. The elevator doors opened and he stepped inside. Before security could catch up, he pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator rose smoothly. Ethan could hear his own breathing. He thought about Lee's drawing. He thought about Eleanor lying in a hospital bed, unable to speak. He thought about everything he had lost because someone decided he was guilty without proof. The doors opened on the executive floor. It was quieter here, the air heavy with the smell of leather and expensive coffee. A hallway stretched ahead, lined with glass-walled offices. At the far end, a set of double doors stood closed. Ethan walked toward them. A young man in a tailored suit stepped out of one of the offices and moved to block his path. Sir, you can't be up here. Ethan kept walking. Get out of my way. The man grabbed his arm. Ethan pulled free and kept moving. The double doors ahead opened, and Vivian stepped out. She was holding a tablet, her face tight with irritation. Behind her, a room full of people sat around a long table. All eyes turned toward the commotion. Vivian saw Ethan and went very still. "What the hell are you doing here?" Ethan stopped a few feet away from her. His voice was steady, but there was something raw underneath it. "You wouldn't listen at the hospital, so I'm making you listen now." Vivian's jaw tightened. She glanced back at the conference room where her team was watching in silence. Then she looked at Ethan again. "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded drawing. He held it up so she could see it. "Your mother didn't imagine what happened. Someone did go into her room, and my daughter saw him." Vivian's eyes flicked to the paper, but she did not take it. "A child's drawing is not evidence." Ethan stepped closer, his voice rising. "She drew this weeks ago before any of this happened. She saw Marcus go into your mother's room with something in his hand. She didn't know what it was, but your mother did. She told me someone took a USB drive from under her pillow. The same drive you gave her to keep safe." Vivian's expression shifted slightly. It was not belief. It was something closer to uncertainty. "Marcus has been with me for 3 years. He has no reason to steal from me." Ethan's voice turned cold. "Then why has he been deleting security footage? Why did the camera in your office malfunction the same day your mother's drive went missing? You think that's a coincidence?" Vivian did not answer. She looked past Ethan toward the hallway. Her assistant, a woman named Claire, was standing near the elevator, phone in hand. "Where's Marcus?" Vivian asked. Claire blinked. "He left about 20 minutes ago. He said he wasn't feeling well." Vivian stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back into the conference room. Ethan followed. The people around the table shifted uncomfortably as Vivian moved to the head of the room and opened her laptop. "What are you doing?" one of the board members asked. Vivian did not answer. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. She pulled up the security system and started scrolling through archived footage. Ethan stood behind her watching the screen. She found the date the morning the envelope went missing. The camera feed for her office was blank, just like she had seen before. But there was another camera, one that covered the stairwell leading to the second floor. Vivian pulled up that feed and scrolled to the same timestamp. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then a figure appeared, moving quickly up the stairs. Dark hair, suit, jacket, Marcus. Vivian leaned closer to the screen. Marcus disappeared from view, heading toward the second floor. A few minutes later, he came back down. He was not holding anything visible, but his hand was in his pocket. Vivian scrolled forward. An hour later, Marcus went upstairs again. This time, the feed showed him entering Eleanor's suite on the first floor. He was only inside for a few minutes. When he came out, his hand was still in his pocket. The room was silent. One of the board members cleared his throat. "Vivian, what is this?" Vivian did not answer. She stood up and walked out of the room. Ethan followed her into the hallway. Vivian pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Her voice was sharp. "Find Marcus now." She hung up and looked at Ethan. Her face was unreadable. "If you're wrong about this," Ethan cut her off. "I'm not." Vivian turned and walked toward the elevator. Ethan stayed close. They rode down in silence. The only sound the hum of the cables. When the doors opened, 2 security officers were waiting in the lobby. Vivian spoke quickly. "Marcus Trent, find out where he is. If he's still in the building, bring him to me. If he's not, track his car." One of the officers nodded and spoke into his radio. The other pulled out a tablet and started typing. Within minutes, they had an answer. "His car left the parking garage 18 minutes ago. We have him on the exit camera heading east." Vivian looked at the officer. "Get the police on the line. Tell them we have evidence of corporate theft and data breach. I want him found." The officer moved quickly. Vivian stood there, her arms crossed, her face pale. Ethan watched her and saw something he had not expected. Doubt not in him. In herself, she turned to him, and for the first time, her voice was not cold. "If he took that drive, he has access to everything. Client data, contracts, private information. He could sell it to anyone." Ethan nodded slowly. "That's why he framed me. He needed you, distracted. He needed you looking the other way." Vivian closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were wet. "I should have listened to my mother." Ethan did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Vivian had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. The police found Marcus 3 hours later at a motel near the state line. He had a laptop, 2 external hard drives, and the USB drive Eleanor had kept under her pillow. He tried to run when they knocked on the door, but there was nowhere to go. Vivian was at the station when they brought him in. Ethan was not. He was at the hospital sitting outside Eleanor's room. A nurse had told him Vivian had called and updated Eleanor's visitor list. His name was on it now. He went inside. Eleanor was awake, her eyes half open. She could not speak, but she looked at him and smiled. It was small and weak, but it was there. Ethan sat down beside her and took her hand. "I'm sorry I couldn't come sooner." Eleanor squeezed his hand. It was barely any pressure at all, but he felt it. They sat like that for a long time. not saying anything. Then the door opened, and Vivian walked in. She stopped when she saw Ethan, then moved to the other side of the bed. She looked at her mother, then at Ethan. "I owe you an apology." Ethan looked up at her. "You do?" Vivian's jaw tightened, but she did not look away. "I was wrong about you, about everything." Ethan nodded slowly. "You didn't trust me because you didn't think I deserved it. You didn't believe your mother because you thought she was confused. You were so sure you knew the truth that you didn't bother looking for it." Vivian's voice was quiet. "I know." Eleanor made a small sound. Both of them looked at her. She was looking at Vivian, her eyes full of something that might have been forgiveness or might have been disappointment. Vivian reached out and took her mother's other hand. "I'm sorry, Mom." Eleanor's eyes softened. She squeezed Vivian's hand the same way she had squeezed Ethan's. Ethan stood up. "I should go." Vivian looked at him. "Say, please." Ethan hesitated, then sat back down. The three of them stayed like that for a long time, sitting in the quiet of the hospital room while the world outside kept moving. 3 months later, Ethan was back at the Layton estate, but this time, he was not alone. Lily was with him, running through the garden with a watering can, laughing as she tried to reach the flower beds. Eleanor sat in her wheelchair nearby, watching with a smile. She still could not speak much, but she could say a few words now. Lily's name was one of them. Vivian stood on the terrace watching them. She had started a foundation, a care center for families who could not afford full-time help. Ethan ran it. It was not what he had expected, but it was good work, important work. Vivian walked down the steps and stopped beside Ethan. "She's happy." Ethan nodded. "She is." Vivian looked at him. "Thank you for not giving up." Ethan glanced at her. "I didn't do it for you." Vivian smiled slightly. "I know." She walked over to where Eleanor and Lily were sitting and knelt down beside them. Lily showed her a flower she had picked, and Vivian took it carefully, like it was something precious. Ethan watched them for a moment, then turned back toward the house. On the wall inside Vivian's office, framed and hung where she could see it every day, was Lily's drawing, the one that had changed everything. Some things did not need to be proven with words. Some things just needed someone brave enough to believe, and sometimes the truth found its way to the surface, no matter how deep it had been buried. Ethan walked back toward the garden where his daughter was laughing, and the sun was breaking through the clouds. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe.